Hi, I'm Gretchen Hirsch. I'm a sewing blogger and author. I also design sewing patterns and fabric. Today I'm going to show you how to make a really simple zippered clutch. I love designs from the 40s and 50s, so handbags are a huge part of that. But what I really like about this project is that it's very easy, it's a great beginner's project, and you can really dress it up with a fancy fabric like this. And then it has a lining as well, so you're going to learn how to make a lining and the outer fabric and insert a zipper. The other nice thing about this project is that you're going to make your own pattern, so you can make it to any dimensions. You can customize it to your uses if you want to use it as a makeup bag or a pencil case, whatever you want to do with it. So let's talk about what you're going to need. You'll want to have two sets of scissors, one that's for paper and one that's for fabric. You'll need a pencil to make your pattern with. You'll want a zipper. I'm using a 9-inch standard zipper, and that's important. You'll want a regular zipper or a standard zipper as opposed to an invisible zipper. 9 inches is a great size for this. The length of the zipper determines the length of your bag at the top, so consider that when you're shopping for zippers. You're also going to need thread. Just all-purpose polyester thread is perfect. Match your fabric when you're shopping for thread. I'm going to use this red so it really shows up when we're sewing and you can see what I'm doing. But keep in mind that the stitching is going to show next to the zipper. So you'll probably want to blend with your fabric, or if you really want to, you can use a top stitching thread in a bright color to contrast. Of course, you're going to need pins, so I always keep my wrist pin cushion handy. And then for making the pattern, you're going to want some paper. I just have some regular sketching paper here. It doesn't have to be anything fancy like pattern making paper. Butcher paper is fine, craft paper. And then a ruler, like a quilting ruler. Now for fabric, you'll want to have two different fabrics, one for the outer bag and then one for the lining. So you can either have them match or you can use a contrast for your lining. If you're making the clutch to this size, which is about 9 inches by 7 inches, then you'll only need a 1/4 yard of each of your fabrics. So next, we're going to talk about how to make the pattern. Let's talk about how to make the pattern. So like I said earlier, the length of the zipper determines the width of the clutch at the top, so the length of the clutch along the top. So let's open up our zipper. And a common mistake can be to say, okay, I have a 9-inch zipper, so I'm just going to make it 9 inches wide at the top. But actually, it needs to be slightly longer, and I know this because I've made this mistake before, because it needs to end above and below those metal stops. We don't want to sew over the metal stops at the top and bottom of the zipper. So let's measure how long the zipper is from the bottom stop to the top stop. So, and give yourself just a little bit of wiggle room there. And it's actually about 9 1/8. So that 1/8 of an inch is going to help so much when we're trying to sew this. So 9 1/8 is our width along the top. The height of the clutch, I'm going to make 7 inches. And then we need to add an inch to each of those measurements for seam allowances, because we're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. So your first measurement is going to be at the bottom here, and what I'm going to do, just to make things easy on myself, is use this sharp corner on the edge of the paper. It's already there for me, it's a perfect right angle, so I'm going to start with this corner, and I'm going to measure over 10 1/8 inches. And just make a little mark here. Okay, so make a mark at 10 1/8. Then I'm going to flip my ruler around and measure up 8 inches. So the 8 inches is 7 inches, which is the height of the bag, plus 1 inch for a seam allowance. And I'm going to align my grid here so that I know I have a perfect right angle, and just draw a line up 8 inches. And then make a little mark at the top. And then I'm going to draw my line across here to continue the rectangle. So I'm aligning it with the edge of the paper and then drawing over. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the pattern. It's a really simple rectangle. Again, it's going to be 10 1/8 this way by 8 inches that way. So you can go ahead and make a note here of what this is. It's very easy to throw this scrap of paper away thinking that it's garbage. But so make a note for yourself here that this is your clutch pattern. And that's all you need. So use your paper scissors to cut this out. And just cut right along that line. So you've just made a really simple sewing pattern. Okay, you can get rid of your extra paper. So put that aside. Now we're going to cut out the fabric using our pattern as a template. Let's start with the outer fabric. You're going to cut 2 of each, okay? So 2 of the lining and 2 of the outer fabric. We're going to end up with 4 rectangles total. So find a selvage when you open out your fabric. That's this bit here with the sort of fuzzy edge. And what you'll do is just make a fold here. And you want to make sure that this is an equal distance across here. You don't want it to be askew at all because then your fabric will be off grain. So just kind of make sure that you have a straight line here, that it's folded the same distance all the way across. Okay. So once you're happy with how that looks, you can use your pattern to cut out your pieces here. So lay it down. I'm going to align it with the selvage over here so that I know that it's straight. And I'm going to grab my pins. And you can just lay it out here like this. And pin around the edges. You want to make sure that those corners are pinned down securely. I have a little fold here, so I want to make sure that that's secure as well and that's not popping up. Okay, and now we can cut around the pattern using our fabric scissors. So just go slow here. Make sure that you're cutting right along the pattern, but not actually cutting the pattern itself. And if you felt really confident that you could draw a really nice, even rectangle, you could even just draw your dimensions right on the fabric if you wanted. But I always feel like things get a little bit misshapen when I do that, so I always like to have a paper pattern. Okay, let's cut along this fold here. So we have 2 of our outer pattern cut out. The next thing you're going to do is do the exact same thing with your lining fabric. So you will have 4 of this rectangle total. Okay, next we're going to cut out the lining fabric. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with this cotton sateen. I'm going to find a selvage. Again, that's that fuzzy part with the edge there. I'm going to make a fold. This. And again, just make sure that you're even here, that you are folded out the exact same width so that your fold isn't actually on an angle, which can cause your fabric to be off grain and end up a little wacky. So obviously make sure you have enough width to cut out your pattern piece with, and then make sure that it's even across the fold. Perfect. Okay. So same thing. I like to just keep the outer fabric just pinned here and then just lay it down again. It's super simple, goes quick. I'm going to use my selvage again to align things. And then I'm going to repin. So you can use a lot of different fabrics for this clutch. You could even use something kind of complicated like leather. That probably wouldn't be great for a beginner. For a beginner, I would say stick with cotton, maybe even a quilting cotton or a cotton sateen like this lining fabric. You can make it really fancy with a silk brocade like I'm using, or a silk jacquard. There are a lot of things you can do to really dress this up or keep it super simple. So again, we're cutting around here. Cutting nice and close there. Also think if you want to do any embellishments, you could put beading on this, you could add decorative trim. There's a lot you can do with it. It's kind of a blank slate project. Right. So here's our last side. And now I have 4 pieces cut out, 4 rectangles, 10 1/8 this way, 8 inches high. And I have 2 cut out in my fabric, the outer fabric, and 2 in my lining fabric. So 4 total, and now we are ready to sew. The last thing we did was cut out our clutch pattern. So we have 2 pieces cut out in the outer fabric and 2 pieces cut out in the lining fabric. Now we're ready to sew. Take off the pattern, the paper pattern. You can put this aside and save it for later. You know, it's always nice to have it ready to go if you want to make another. So put that to the side, and we're going to start with the outer fabric and our zipper. Put your lining fabric to the side for now too. Open these out so that they are right side facing up. Okay, so you're looking at the right side of your fabric, the side that's going to be on the outside of the bag. You're going to take your zipper and you're going to place it face down. So we have the pull of the zipper right here, and we want to make sure that that's facing down when we place this. Okay, we're going to place it at the upper edge of this rectangle of fabric. And you want to kind of center the zipper on the fabric. So I just have a little bit hanging over, just those pink edges of the zipper are kind of overhanging on the edges of the fabric. And what I want to do is make sure that the edge of the zipper tape is matching the edge of the fabric. And I'm going to pin them together. Okay, so place pins along this side, just along the zipper tape, not through the teeth. The teeth are those coils that go down the center of the zipper, so we're not pinning through that, okay? Just through the tape, which is the fabric part of the zipper. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is stitch this zipper tape down to the fabric. To do this, you need a special presser foot called a zipper foot, okay? So it looks like this. It's very narrow. It has that narrow sort of toe to it, I guess. If this is a foot, that's kind of the toe, so that you can get around a zipper. Zippers are bulky, they have metal parts that you don't want to stitch over, so you need something that's kind of skinny to allow you to get around the zipper, to maneuver around it. So that's why you use a different foot for a zipper. This should have come with your sewing machine, so if you haven't seen it before, it's probably in that box of parts that came with your machine. So you're going to install this on your sewing machine. These are very easy to change out. You just need to press the button. This is usually how it's done on most machines, is there should be a little button on the back of the shank of the presser foot. So just press that in and it will release the presser foot that's on there. So put that to the side. And then you want to lower the presser foot onto the bar of the zipper foot. So all the presser feet have a bar that goes across. And it's almost like a little claw that grabs onto the bar. So when you lower it, it'll grab the bar and click in, and then they should move as one when you raise and lower the presser foot now. The next thing we need to do is move the needle, okay? Your machine might not be like this, but this particular machine is. If I tried to sew right now, I would be sewing down the middle of the presser foot and my needle would break. So I need to sew to either side of this narrow presser foot. So I know that I want the needle to be to the left of the presser foot because that's where I'm going to be stitching the zipper. And that's what I want to avoid. So I want the bulk of the presser foot to the right of the zipper teeth. So that means I need to move the needle that way, to the left. So my machine has some little arrows, and I'm going to position it as far as it will go to the left. First thing we're going to do is stitch down the center of the zipper tape. Not a bad idea, actually, to open the zipper, so pull the pull down a little bit, and then we'll be able to stitch much easier without the pull in the way. The pull is the bulkiest part of the zipper, and it always gets in the way. Okay, so we're going to stitch down the center of the zipper tape. On my machine and with this presser foot, that means that I'm aligning the edge of the zipper foot perfectly with the edge of the zipper tape and the edge of the fabric. I'm using a regular stitch length, standard stitch length, so 2.5. And I'm stitching right down the center of the tape, aligning the edge. And now that I'm getting close to the pull again, I can stop with the needle down. I can actually program this machine to stop with the needle down. There we go. And then I can raise the presser foot and the needle won't move, so the fabric will stay exactly where it is, and I can close the zipper, and now I don't have to worry about stitching around the pull again, so I've gotten it out of my way. That's a little extra step, but it really helps because stitching around a pull is notoriously difficult. You kind of have to swerve around it, and then you have a crooked line of stitching, which never looks good. You may notice that I'm using red thread here. That's so you can see it. You're probably using thread that matches your project. And I'm stitching all the way to the end. Back stitching isn't so important right here because we're going to be intersecting this line of stitching with another one. So it's not quite so important with this project. All right, I'm going to raise my needle, pull this out, and snip either end. Okay, one step done. The next thing we want to do is take our other piece of outer fabric, and it's going to be the exact same thing. Right side is going to go face down with the zipper. Okay, so you can see if I open it out, I'm going to pin it here, like so. And I want to make sure that these edges are matching. The edges of the fabric. We can do it from this side actually. So that the zipper is face down, again, on the right side of the fabric, just like we did on the first side. Okay, so now we're going to have a piece of fabric on either side of the zipper tape. Same thing on the other side of the zipper tape. We're just going to stitch right down the middle. But now we're sewing the other side of the fabric. Okay, taking out my pins as I go. And just make sure that your edges stay aligned so that everything is even at the end. I'm getting close to the pull on this side now. So I'm going to raise my presser foot, my needle is down, and I'm going to open the zipper pull so that it's out of my way, like we talked about on the other side. And now I'm going to finish up. Okay, there we go. Two sides down. All right, so now you'll see what we have here. We have two sides of the outer fabric, each sewn to opposite sides of the zipper tape. The next thing we're going to do is really cool. This is the lining, okay? We're going to create a sandwich on each side with the lining and the fabric. So let me show you what I mean. Take one piece of the lining fabric, and each lining piece is going to get pinned on the opposite side of the zipper tape, so that you're creating a fabric sandwich on each side with the zipper tape as the filling. Okay, so you're going to pin it along the zipper tape. You want those edges to align. Okay, and pin this along here. And if your edges aren't aligning at the end there, you want to really take the time to go back and see what's going on. You might need to distribute this a little bit better. Maybe it doesn't match at the beginning. There we go. So what we have here is the zipper tape with a piece of fabric, the outer fabric on one side and the lining fabric on the other. And this is a great method because you're sewing a whole lined pouch completely by machine, and it's super cool. Okay, what we're going to do now is stitch along our previous line of stitching. So we're stitching the lining fabric to the zipper tape in the same position as the outer fabric. We already have a line of stitching to follow. So follow that stitching line. My zipper pull is coming up. I opened it a little bit, so I'm going to stop again. I would recommend doing this really at every step. Just getting it out of the way. It just makes it so much easier to not have to worry about the zipper pull. Okay, I'm just following my line of stitching. And going to the very end. And you may have noticed that we have one piece of lining fabric left. And you've probably guessed that that goes in the same position on this side. Okay, so we're going to create that sandwich again. Right side's facing in. I'm going to position this along the edge of the zipper tape. And all 4 fabric pieces should align at the edges. So just take a little extra time to make sure that that's what's happening. So this is kind of like a little puzzle, but once you figure it out, it makes so much sense. And it's actually pretty fun, this process. Okay, open your zipper pull a little bit if it's at the top. Get it out of the way there. And we're going to stitch along our previous line of stitching, just like we did on the other side. Okay, I feel the pull coming up, so I'm going to raise my presser foot, I'm going to close the pull, and now that's out of the way again. And I'm just making sure all my layers are flat. Okay, we've sewn all 4 pieces of fabric. And this next part I love because you can kind of see how the whole thing is coming together. We're going to open these pieces up so that the lining and the fabric pieces are each facing each other, okay? And what we want to do next is press them all away from the zipper. All right, so take this over to your ironing board and just place it down like this and just smooth it out. Make sure that all the layers are really smooth, extending from the zipper. And just press them with kind of like a motion away from the zipper itself on each side. All right. The next thing we're going to do is to edge stitch on either side of the zipper on the fold of fabric, which will keep the fabric in place and it'll keep all those layers flat, okay? And it'll keep things from catching in the zipper, which is important. Keep your zipper foot on, that's important for this step. You can start on the right side of the zipper and make sure that all the pieces of fabric are kind of pushed away. And then you're going to start stitching at the top here. And you're stitching along the edge of the fabric. So there's a fold there where it folds away from the fabric, and that's what you're stitching along. So this is technically edge stitching. And it's very satisfying because it keeps all your layers nice and flat here. And you're going to see it really improves the appearance of the fabric around the zipper as well. It just gives it a nice professional finish. Especially if you're using a thread color that actually matches your fabric. But you could make a sort of bold choice here and use sort of flashy colored thread, a contrast or something like that. Okay, we're going to end there. Pull this out and cut your threads. And same thing on the other side. So just turn the whole thing around and stitch from the bottom up now. That will make sure that your zipper foot is on the correct side when you go to stitch. And I find that it's pretty helpful to use this kind of motion with your hands to keep everything sort of pressed away from the zipper and kind of taut here. That side is finished now too. So as you can see, the zipper teeth and part of the tape are exposed, and then we have edge stitching on either side. The next step is very important, okay? You're going to open your zipper at least halfway. If you don't do that step, it's going to be very difficult to turn the whole thing right side out later because you won't be able to open it because the whole thing's going to be inside out. All right, next thing we're going to do is take the right sides and put them together. The right sides of the outer fabric and the right sides of the lining, okay? So it's going to look like this. The zipper, you have to position correctly. This is really important too. The zipper teeth need to be kind of folded so that they're facing the lining. So you're going to fold the zipper tape on top, the two pieces of the tape on top of each other, and the teeth are going to be pointed towards the lining. And I'm going to start pinning up here at the middle so that I make sure that I have those correctly positioned before I move on to pinning the rest of it. Here we go. Okay, and once you have that where you want it, then you'll pin around the rest of this big rectangle. And what's going to happen is we're going to stitch around the entire thing, around the edges, except we're going to leave a hole at the bottom of the lining, which is going to allow us to turn the whole thing right side out. And the cool thing about this method is that all the seam allowances are enclosed. You'll see how my fabric is kind of fraying now. That's really common with this kind of brocade. But it doesn't matter because all those seam allowances are going to be completely enclosed by the lining, and we don't have to worry about finishing any of them. All right, now we can pin these lining rectangles together. Just make sure that all the edges match, all the corners match. Okay, so we have it pinned all the way around. I'm going to start stitching about here on the lining, okay? About 2/3 of the way over. And then I'm going to go all the way around here, here. I'm going to pivot at every corner, and we'll talk about that, what that means when we get there. And then I'm going to finish about 1/3 of the way over here, which will leave about 3 inches open on the bottom of the lining. And that's going to be where we're going to turn the whole clutch through. All right, so let's start stitching here. Our seam allowance should be 1/2 inch. Remember that you've moved your needle over, so that will change the position of the needle, whatever is on the throat plate. So I moved my needle over about 1/8 of an inch. I'm using the zipper foot. So I need to actually align this with 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so if you're unsure, just get out a clear gridded ruler and measure the distance from your needle to the measurement on your throat plate and make sure that you're at 1/2 inch. Okay, we'll start stitching here. Remember, this is the bottom of the lining. And I back stitched, okay, because that's very important here. We do need it to be secure. When we get to our corner, we're going to stop with the needle down. And we want to make sure that it's our 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to kind of test that by pivoting over, by swinging the fabric over and checking my seam allowance. I need to go about 1 more stitch. So I'm going to do that with the hand wheel so I have more control. So needle is down, I'm going to raise my presser foot, and I'm going to swing the fabric over. And there we go. So that is pivoting. So that's just turning a corner while sewing. Now, when you get to the zipper, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on up here. I like to go over this part with the hand wheel as well. We shouldn't be hitting any metal here because we hopefully measured correctly, but it's not a bad idea to go with the hand wheel anyway, just in case you do hit something hard under there. You won't hit it with enough force to actually break the needle, which can be really scary. Okay, so we're good. I'm going to keep going with the foot pedal. And again, I'm just going to use the hand wheel because I'm about to pivot. I'm going to test my pivot to make sure that I'm at the correct seam allowance on this side, that I went far enough. And it looks right, so I'm going to keep going here. Not a bad idea to make sure that your edges are aligned here. Okay. Another pivot coming up, so use your hand wheel. It's very easy to get overexcited and use the foot pedal and go right past your point where you wanted to pivot. Okay. I'm coming up to zipper tape and a lot of hardware up here again, so I'm just going to use my hand wheel, making sure I don't hit anything underneath. All right, we're good, so I'm going to keep going with the foot pedal. And we just have one more corner to pivot. And remember, we're leaving a hole here at the bottom to turn the whole thing. So don't go all the way and meet up with your previous line of stitching. Make sure to leave yourself at least 3 inches here. And then backstitch. Okay, trim your threads. Once you've sewn all the way around, before turning it right side out, you'll want to trim down these corners, okay? Because we want to have nice sharp corners and we want to remove any bulk from the corners. So just kind of angle your scissors across there. And we're just getting rid of any seam allowance in the corner. So do that on all 4 corners. And you have to be careful here that you don't actually cut through your stitching. It's very easy to do, but get close to it. All right, so that when we turn it out, we can make those corners nice and crisp. Okay. All right, now we can turn it right side out. So you left yourself that little hole at the bottom of the lining, and you're going to turn the whole thing through that hole. All right, now before you stick the lining down into the clutch itself, I would say now's a good time to kind of poke out those corners with your fingers. You can use a point presser here, which is like a little bamboo or wooden tool that helps you point corners out. But I find that can be a little too aggressive. So in this case, I'm just going to use a finger, and that should give me a crisp enough corner. So I'm going through all 4 corners. Okay. Now, before we put the lining into the clutch itself, we're going to want to close up this hole, okay? So this can easily be done by machine. You could do it by hand if you like to hand sew, but if you're doing just a really quick project that you want to get done in the next 5 minutes, you can just close this up by machine by top stitching it. It's going inside the clutch, so you're never going to see this. And this is actually how a lot of ready-to-wear garments are made, where you turn something in through a little hole like this. What they actually do in factories is just stitch this shut along that side, because you're never going to see it on the outside. So go to your machine. I'm going to switch back to my regular presser foot here, just because that's a little bit easier. And I'm going to reposition my needle to the middle, and now I'm going to stitch along this edge. So make sure you know where the opening starts. There we go. Start stitching there. So about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. I'm stitching and I'm going to back stitch. Got my pins. And again, this is going to blend in really well if you're using, say, a black thread that would match your fabric here. Okay, and now you're just going to snip those off. And this is where you're really glad that you left your zipper partway open here, so you can actually reach in here. And you're going to turn the lining into the bag entirely. The edges of the zipper here, you're going to want to kind of push out a little bit. And just kind of get these layers as flat as you can here. There's some extra threads. Okay, smooth everything down like that, and then we're going to do a final press. So I'm going to close the zipper now. See how nice that looks? Okay, so take it over to your ironing board and just lay it out nice and flat like this. And the zipper teeth should be along the upper edge here. And you're going to press the whole thing flat. And you can kind of get it from both sides here. It doesn't have to be super crisp, but you want it to have a nice finished look to it. So that is it, your finished zipper clutch. As you can see, it was super easy to make, but also really impressive with the completed lining on the inside. The entire thing was made by machine, so it's very easy and fast. You can make these in mere minutes once you get started. So they're great for a lot of uses. You could put a strap on this and make it a crossbody bag, obviously an evening clutch, or you could even use this as a makeup bag to throw in your luggage. So there's so many uses, and these would make really great gifts. So I hope you have fun making lots and lots of these.